Today we are going to be riding in some snowy conditions in a local trail, Fairland Regional Park. Now I've only ridden a handful of times in the snow, but Fairland gets tons of riders, so I'm hoping that there's going to be lots of riders through to hard pack the snow. There's a couple of things you need to know about riding your mountain bike in the snow. Let's get started. Top things that you need in riding in the snow is having the right clothing. Make sure that you layer up. Having just a few layers underneath, one or two, makes a big difference. Make sure that you get really nice warm gloves. Make sure that your clothes is waterproof and insulated. Warm gloves make a big difference, and that is the one thing that my hands usually get are extremely cold while riding, especially in this sort of weather. Tire selection really matters. My rear tire is not that great for riding in the snow. As long as it's hard packed, I should have no problem. But one technique that you should use is lower down the PSI of your tire. Make it nice and soft and cushy, because if it's hard packed, there's not going to be as many like twigs poking out to potentially give you like a puncture. So this will be a great technique. Keep it nice and low, and it will be a much better way to get traction while riding. Another thing you should do is adjust your suspension so it's a little bit softer while riding. This makes a big difference when you're riding a mountain bike in the snow. Of course, riding in the snow, this is when fat bikes come into play. Those things have tons of traction, are some of the most fun bikes you could possibly get. Sure, they require a lot of energy to keep pedaling, but they're not going to lose as much traction as something like this with the narrower tires. Another thing you should do is drop your saddle a bit, because you're not going to have as much traction while riding. Keeping it just a little bit lower so you can kind of like move around is a little easier in the snow. Another thing you should do is brake very carefully. You can't just grab a handful of brakes while riding, or try to avoid your front brake a little bit more. Use your rear just a little bit so you can kind of slide around. And remember, you don't have as much traction, so if you hit your brakes, you're just going to overpower the bike and your weight. Another thing that you should do is like stay relaxed. People will tense up when riding in the snow, and that's a recipe for disaster. You want to be as relaxed as possible. That goes in general for mountain bike riding. You want to find trails that are hard packed, that is very well used, and that way it's going to be a little bit easier, a whole lot easier to ride. If you're riding in hard packed snow where other bikers have gone through, it makes it much easier. But if you ride in the deep snow, be prepared to waste more energy. It's kind of like riding in deep sand, and it squirms a whole lot more. You can't really see what's underneath, so that's going to be affected. If you ride in hard-packed snow, you're pretty much just on top of it, and you have plenty of traction. Another thing you should be aware is, because you're riding in deep snow and it's freezing temperatures, your bike, the metal, you could have a breakage. Your crank, your pedals could potentially break due to the temperature. There's different parts of the bike that could be affected, so keep that in mind. Lastly, you want to keep your ride short. Don't go on any massive, epic rides in the snow. I think that's the reason I like the local trail around here, Fairland Regional Park. It's well used, so I know that the trails are going to be hard packed because there's a lot of riders who are very hardcore, and it's limited to about 1 hour. So that's a great trail to do. You don't want to do a 2 hour, at least for me, because your body is just going to be freezing. And if you have a malfunction, that's going to be a very cold walk back to your car. So those are just some of the tips for riding in the snow. Make sure you stay frosty in this winter time. You can still ride all year round. Winter with snow is some of the most fun you could possibly have. I was very surprised with the riding conditions. They were much better than I thought. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.